Today's show is brought to you by Audible. Audible is offering our listeners a free audiobook with a 30-day trial membership. Just go to audibletrial.com/INTB and browse the unmatched selection of audio programs. Download a title free and start listening. It's easy. Go to audibletrial.com/INTB.
Honestly, they're not that bad.
Welcome to an episode of It's Not That Bad Podcast. I am Fern here with Dom.
Hey, everybody.
So obviously, we've been stuck in quarantine for X amount of time. It's weird, but I feel like it's been going by faster than usual. I mean, okay, let me phrase this real quick. I go out because I have to.
Yeah.
I don't go out because I'm like, oh, I'm young and I'm not going to get sick. And I'm like, hey, why am I getting coronavirus? It's like, because you fucking flock to a place full of people and you won't stop hanging out there, you fucking idiots.
Yeah, but I thought only old people died of coronavirus.
Which is so dumb because I was talking to Raleigh about that and, you know, he's very like, I don't get how people are so stupid.
Yeah.
And it's just, you know, it's not because those people are like, well, it hasn't affected me, so I'm good.
Yeah.
But it's like, shouldn't that be your biggest fear that it does affect you? It's like, come on, guys. Just fucking stay in. But, I mean, we're not going to try to talk about that too much. But I just want to say, you know, being stuck in here, you know, don't really have to go out as often. I think I told you prior to, like, sometimes I'll just give something a watch. I'll just do this. I'll just do that. I told you I saw some sci-fi movie because I'm like, hey, that's a sci-fi movie. And and the CG's not that bad. Okay. And then you ask me, is it good? And I say, I don't know. I watched it.
It was a movie.
It was definitely a movie. That one guy was in there. Yeah.
It was definitely sci-fi.
Yeah, I can tell you that. No, but then, like, you know, a lot of people are like super into, well, now I got to watch everything like virus related. Like, oh, you guys remember Contagion? That's a really good movie.
Oh, yeah, the movie that came out a while ago that I saw. I'm pretty sure you saw when it came out, and we were both like, oh, hey, this is a pretty good movie.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay.
And now everyone's like, oh my God, have you guys... Oh.
My little sister literally calls it the coronavirus movie.
It's like, where were you guys back then when it came out?
Well, she probably was still like...
Well, not her.
No, anyways, but everyone's watching everything, like, whatever related. So I'm like, well, what can I do to get away from that? So I'm like, oh, I know, The Dark Side of the Ring, the documentary series talking about all the fucked up shit that happened in wrestling. And as you know, the new season came on, but I went back and because I remember it when it came out, but it was one, like, Vice is one of those things where I like a lot of stuff Vice does, but I don't really always see eye to eye with Vice. So.
Exactly, yeah, because they did something one time where I was like, yeah, see, I agree with your premise, but the way you're confrontational about it is like, calm down.
Yeah. So I have like a love-hate relationship with a lot of stuff Vice does. So, you know, I'm usually late to the game most of the time. But I went and I, you know, downloaded all the things on cable and I started watching them. And you know, I'm thinking like, oh, this is going to talk about this or this. And it did, like, it talked about the Montreal screw job, which is a huge thing in, you know, wrestling. But then it seems like most everything else was like, yeah, so this guy got murdered. So this guy got murdered. So this guy got murdered. And this guy got murdered. Oh, and then remember this girl who some say prostituted her wrestlers. Yeah. But remember, this guy got murdered. And so I was like, God, there's a lot of people in wrestling who get murdered under mysterious circumstances.
It's crazy.
And then he was talking about Macho Man. They had a thing on him, and he was talking about Jake the Snake Roberts was talking about how when he did the thing with biting him, that he came in prior to, and he was like, "You got to tell me if that snake is fixed." And he's like, "Yeah, it's fixed. Like, why wouldn't it be?" And he's like, "Oh, okay, well, let it bite you." And he's like, "I'm not gonna fucking let it bite me." He's like, "No, you gotta let it bite you, or that means it's not fixed. You're trying to get me." And he's like, "What the fuck?" So he said finally he put down his boot and he let the snake bite him and stuff like that and took it off. And he was like, "No, don't you go get help. You gotta sit here for 20 minutes so I know you're telling the truth." He's like, "What the fuck?"
Brother.
So he said, he's like, we literally just sat there till who God knows when. And he was like, "All right, I guess you're telling the truth."
God damn it.
It was like super weird, but that's basically all they've been doing, trying to like pass time.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not necessarily like bored.
Well, I was already starting to like rewatch Lost anyway, so that was how I'm passing my time.
But didn't you hear how it doesn't hold up?
Oh my God.
And it's one of the worst TV shows to ever exist.
You want to know what's funny is that like everything that they say about Lost is like if you just substitute Westworld, it's like I feel like that's that's what's gonna happen later. Is people are
Did
gonna
they show titties in Lost? Exactly.
Because it has a lot of the same things where it's like mystery. But I'm listening to this podcast. The only thing I hate about it is that it was a Game of Thrones podcast before. So they love Game of Thrones, and it's still early in the like Lost part that I'm listening to, and they reference that all the time. I'm like, get your Game of Thrones out of my Lost because I hate it. I don't want to hear nothing about Game of Thrones.
But what about Game of Thrones in your Westworld?
I was okay with that until the only thing that they were talking about was, did you see the Game of Thrones in Westworld? It's like, no, it was Westworld. And it just had a cameo.
Well, honestly, I think it's cool because it insinuates, right, that the Game of Thrones that everyone saw was a storyline.
Oh, yeah, no, that part's cool. I like that.
But how you don't know how many people are like, "Oh, that's stupid," like, "No, that's not, blah blah blah." Oh, like they're literally upset that they would even insinuate. But what I found hilarious is that George R. Martin even said he wanted like a tie-in.
Yeah.
Which I was like, honestly, think about the last season of Westworld, and they go and they're like, "Oh, we have to get all of the ex-hosts and blah blah blah," and then they go into like the medieval world or whatever, right? Yeah. Or what was that guy? I forgot what he called it. He was like the throne zone. That's the Westworld Park or whatever park, and then but they go and they get like all the old retired hosts, and then it's like, "Hey, that's that Jon Snow guy," and it's like, see. Like, I would actually enjoy that. As someone who didn't really care for Game of Thrones, the fact that they would want to tie this in, and they even hit at, like, Jurassic World or Jurassic Park or whatever.
Yeah.
I like that.
No, yeah, see, like, I like that. What I don't like is that people, they're only talking about Westworld because it's like, oh, because it has Game of Thrones now.
Yeah. But honestly, this quarantine thing has been, like, me more intrigued in TV more than anything. Because you're right, like there's a lot of stuff where I'm like, I should watch that. Like I was about to start Chernobyl, but then I was like, well, let me finish this first, and then I'll get to that. So I haven't got to it yet. So there's a bunch of shit that I want to catch up on. But it's just like, can we do this for another couple of weeks? Well, actually, maybe not, because our president said that we'll be good in like 2
by
weeks.
Easter.
Yeah,
which is April, 12th or something?
Yeah, so we'll be good, Dom. We'll be good.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Either way, remember, stay safe.
Mm.
Don't go to the beaches or try to go eat dinner in 100-place, people packed, whatever. Just chill.
Yeah. And
wash your hands and chill.
And if you do have to go out, like to go to the grocery store, don't hoard. Because they're not going to return anything you hoard.
This is the fucking news.
The American box office has hit 0 for the first time ever in the history of box office, I guess, which has been about 100 years. This past weekend marked the first time that there has been no official reporting on the weekend box office numbers since 1994, when the Northridge, California earthquakes in January of that year delayed reporting. But still, that weekend in 1994 saw people around the country going to the movies, but the reporting on the numbers themselves were delayed. This weekend, there were no numbers to report at all. It's not to say that there aren't some theaters that didn't stay open over the weekend and still make some money, but none of the major studios in Hollywood reported their official numbers, and ComScore didn't publish a full breakdown of the weekend for the press. So if any box office receipts were printed over the weekend, were likely negligible at best, and officially it's as if the weekend never happened in terms of box office. We may never know what the numbers, if any, happened over this past weekend. According to Box Office Mojo, the final day that box office numbers were reported was Thursday, March 19th, with a total of 143,641 for all 36 feature films in the release across the entire country, where just 233 theaters were open for business. Marks perhaps the lowest single day in modern box office reporting and the lowest single day since October 17th, 2001, 1 month after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, which brought in 150,000. Now, the previous weekend of March 13th to 15th remains the final domestic box office weekend for 2020, which brought in 49 million. The lowest weekend since September 15th to 17th in 2000, which brought in 34.7 million 20 years ago. The American theater business is very much in wait-and-see mode, as it's unclear how long large venues will be closed.
Hold on, Dom. Let me write my article real quick. Will the coronavirus affect movie theaters at all? Question mark.
Oh my God, that's all I keep seeing. Thank you for bringing that up. I mean, I don't know why you have to keep writing about it. It's like, of course, it's going to change things. Like, it's changing the way we do. Like, I'm pretty sure it's changing the way we do a lot of things now.
Yeah, it's like common sense. Of course, this whole thing is going to affect the movie industry. I mean, we've seen it before everything was started closing down when, X thing started or stopped production. Oh, blah, blah, blah is pushing back the release date or blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, of course, as everything starts to shut down, why are the movie theaters going to be an exception? They're not.
No. A big space where hundreds of people can gather together in a small room? Oh, yeah, maybe we should close that.
And like I said, I did praise them for trying for a little bit because
me too.
It was like, hey, at least they're saying like this is around 6 feet plus where, this feels like this is okay, whatever. But when your whole city goes on quarantine or your state or hopefully the country goes on quarantine.
That's going too far.
Yeah, sorry. My bad. Of course that shit's going to be closed. And I mean, like, yeah, it is upsetting to hear because as two people who are not only avid moviegoers, but like lovers of film and just the whole like experience of going to the movies. Yeah. Of course it sucks, it'd be nice to say like, hey, let's go see this. Hey, let's go see that. But we understand why we can't. And we know this isn't going to be permanent. No. This might hurt certain businesses for a while. We don't know if any of these movie companies are going to be like, well, you know what? We tried, but I'd rather save my billions of dollars as opposed to keep my company going.
Which is stupid.
So we don't know. Yes, that's true. But movie theaters aren't going to go away forever.
No.
Maybe some might close and never open.
I think that's more likely where it's like, you'll probably see like a Cinemark might close. Like certain Harkins might close because it's like, well, this one, it's kind of not worth keeping up because it doesn't make as much money as like Tempe Marketplace. I bet you they're all going to gauge it by Tempe Marketplace.
I mean, we don't know, but it is a possibility. Most likely there will be some movie theaters that just won't open ever again.
And then are we going to see more movies instead of coming to theaters, more digital releases, probably. That's probably what they're gonna probably see that like, hey, we can make just as much profit releasing it digitally as we can in theaters, and we're guaranteed because people can watch it same day. They don't have to worry about going to a theater. Or like one thing that people are saying are coming back are like drive-in. I don't think that's gonna last very long.
What's happening right now? Of course, all this stuff is going to be affected. Everyone's being affected right now. And even if you think you're not being affected, probably emotionally they're being affected.
Yeah.
So things are changing. Yes. Is it going to stay this way forever? Probably not. But yeah, you're right. Who knows if Disney sees a value in, hey, well, we could just put movies to rent for a little bit, and then they just go on our app and everyone can buy the app. Like, we don't know exactly how this is gonna be effective or how this is gonna be affected, but we know it's happening. We know it's not gonna be forever. And yeah, it sucks. Like I said, it sucks that we have free time technically now, but we just can't go to the movie theaters.
I would love to go to the movies just like all day.
But I do feel like a lot of media and columnist writers are just they don't have anything to write to, so they're like, well, let me talk about this for the 100th time. It's like, you don't need to. It's pretty understandable if you know you have a brain. But I do feel like people are very one-track minded, and it's hard for them to think about anything else right now except for what's going on in the now. And once everything's cleared up and fixed, things will start getting back to normal as they could be.
Thank God for Star Wars. Actress Rosario Dawson is playing Asoka Tano in The Mandalorian Season 2, the first live-action version of this character, and the reintroduction of Asoka into the Clone Wars series. There's been a big question circulating the Star Wars fandom about whether or not Ahsoka Tano could get her own Disney Plus series. In all honesty, it seems like Star Wars would be missing a major opportunity not to do an Ahsoka Tano series. Her character is more popular than ever, not to mention she's one of only 2 major female Jedi-esque characters in the franchise at the moment, the other one being Daisy Ridley's Rey. Clone Wars covers how Ahsoka served as Anakin's Padawan and had her falling out with the Jedi Order, and soon how she survived Order 66. In Rebels, we found a much older Ahsoka, now serving in the early rebellion. Rebels left things in a very ambiguous place, as Ahsoka seemed to join Mandalorian leader and Rebel specialist Sabine Wren in the campaign to find their missing friend, Jedi Padawan Ezra Bridger. However, the Mandalorian Season 1 ended with the reveal that Mandalore's dark saber of leadership ended up in the possession of Imperial officer Moff Gideon. So this season will either flesh out the whole story or possibly could set up for like her own spinoff. This just goes to show what we've always said about Star Wars. It's moved on beyond the original trilogy. And to see it like a well-loved character get an expanded story is what I think most everyone wants. Fans have been wanting Rosario Dawson to play this character for a while. And we're finally we're living in a time where fans can be like, hey, I want that person to play it. It's like, oh, you want them to play it? Oh, you got it. And honestly, I'm excited to see this because I really want to know too, like, yeah, like you want to know like how did she survive like the Order 66? Like what happened that Mandalore like fell, right? Like how did he get the dark saber? Like what happened? Like all this stuff hasn't been explained like that you can explain in not only this next season but in like a character like her own like story.
Well, from what we know, she was a part of kind of like this main timeline until a little bit after the fall of the Empire, because the way that Rebels ends, it's her and Sabine, and they go look for Ezra, and that was a little bit after, like technically the last movie. So from there to who knows when, whatever, right? I think we're gonna see more of like what's setting up for that, I guess, right?
Yeah. See, that's what I love about Star Wars is that it's ever expanding. Like, yeah, we may get an answer, and maybe an answer we don't like, but we'll get an answer. Or maybe we'll see a character like Sabine, right? Maybe she might pop up.
And I think we had this conversation before about moving around the timeline being fine, which we're totally okay with. But I feel like still revolving around this like main timeline isn't bad. It's just I would also like to see other things. Mm-hmm. Like it would be cool if she does this and who knows what happens. But let's say we put all this stuff to rest and then 10, 15, 20 years later, she's back as Asoka and she's playing the older version of her, like right before this last trilogy, right? Mm-hmm. So you see like, oh, what did happen? Because that's really the time frame that we don't really have anything about. Mm-mm. I mean, we have some books about, but guess what happened between those? Yeah. What was it? 20, 30 years? 30 years. But the most like prequel thing we got is Star Wars Resistance, which is literally right before the movies. So there's a whole thing that we don't know about. Would I like to see it right now? Yeah. But I could also wait 10, 15, who knows how many years, see that later and be like, oh, that's why I remember I loved all this stuff.
Yeah.
As opposed to, well, actually, it's not as good as the original. So, obviously, this is cool. Anything Mandalorian news is going to be cool.
Oh, yeah.
Really, anything Star Wars related is cool. It's just, it's frustrating when we hear this shit because, not because of what they're doing, because we know the backlash of, well, technically, Rosario Dawson would actually be a little bit too old to play Asoka from this time frame. And I just think that blah, 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 blah. I'm stupid and I hate Star Wars. And that's the frustration we get with this stuff. And I know you're saying, well, just don't think about it. But it's hard because that's all we've gotten side by side with everything that comes out.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is. As soon as we hear praise, we hear the negative. It's right there. Even when we're not looking for it.
Nope.
It'll pop up
constantly pops up.
Here's why Ahsoka being in The Mandalorian is the worst thing Star Wars could do. Mm-hmm. But it is cool, and I'm stoked no matter what. And it would be cool to see other characters from this, time frame come back. And it would be cool if, like you said, like, what if they finish with her for The Mandalorian and then they tease like 20 years later?
Yeah.
And it's like, fuck yeah.
This is what I want in Star Wars. I want more expansion, more characters being brought in, like tying back to things like awesome. Like, I just want to see like more of this universe, and I don't care what it is. Like, I don't care that it's Solo and it's not. Who cares if it's not Harrison Ford? I don't care. I don't give a shit. And it doesn't matter what it is. I love the universe so much that no matter what they give me, I'm happy with it.
Good for her. Good for them.
Yeah.
When you meet these people, do you say that she was murdered? Do you say that they had to do a blood test to see if her head matched the body?
Hey, Dad, just calling to see where you and Mom are, if you're coming.
Worst case, they come on Friday and everyone goes home and has a really nice break. After all, we can't let you live here.
You do know about the sisters, don't you? They worship the devil.
Catherine, is there something wrong?
Why are you doing this?
Do you believe in God, Joan? Ever tried to look for him? I look for him in the unlikely things that happen. Little coincidences.
Blackcoat's daughter, what was in the holy water? Is something funny? You smiled a little.
Funny? No. Why? I mean, I just wish you could stay and see my performance. That's all.
The Blackcoat's Daughter is a 2015 psychological horror film written and directed by Osgood Perkins. The plot is split into 3 timelines. The first 2, Rose and Joan, intercut between each other throughout the bulk of the film before a third timeline, Kat, is introduced and comprises the film's climax. Students at the prestigious Catholic Bramford Academy in upstate New York are preparing to be picked up by their parents for a week-long break. Kat, played by Kiernan Shipka, a freshman, and Rose, played by Lucy Boynton, an older student, are left behind when neither of their parents arrive. Rose suspects she may be pregnant, so she deliberately lied to her parents about the vacation dates to bide time. Kat, meanwhile, has a premonitory dream of her parents dying in a car crash and is unable to get a hold of them for an explanation of their tardiness. The 2 girls are left alone together in the academy overnight, and the nuns task Rose with looking after Kat. Rose, however, departs with her boyfriend to inform him of the possible pregnancy. During this time, while Kat is left entirely alone in the building, the phone rings and she responds. Hours later, Rose returns and finds Kat in the boiler room, repeatedly prostrating herself before the boiler. Rose brings Kat back to her dorm and presses for an explanation of her strange behavior. But Kat speaks cryptically and claims her parents are dead, offering no further explanation and disturbing Rose. After Rose leaves, Kat's body starts convulsing and contorting in her bed. The next morning, Rose and an increasingly sickly-looking Kat join the nuns for breakfast, where Kat behaves erratically, vomits, and curses at the nuns. After receiving an alarming phone call, the nuns order Rose to shovel the driveway for the abrupt return of the headmaster Gordon. After shoveling, Rose finds the door to the nuns' cabin locked, with no response from within, and returns to the dorm building. Later, Gordon arrives with the policeman. As they enter the nuns' cabin, a blood stain is seen on the wall, and the men react with shock to something off-screen. A young woman going by Joan, played by Emma Roberts, arrives at a bus stop after escaping a mental institution. A friendly older man named Bill offers Joan a ride with himself and his wife Linda to Bramford, which is near the town where she claims to be headed. As they stop at a motel, Joan showers, revealing a scar on her shoulder and a flashback showing her being shot by a policeman. Bill speaks to Joan over dinner at a nearby restaurant, explaining that he picked her up because she reminded him of his deceased daughter, revealed in a photograph to be Rose. The next day will be the 9-year anniversary of Rose's death, on which her parents visit Bramford every year. Joan recognizes Rose and retreats to the restaurant bathroom, where she suppresses a fit of laughter. Another flashback reveals Joan is a fake name, having murdered a young woman by that name and stolen her identity. Bill, Linda, and Joan depart for Bramford. During the days leading up to the winter break, Kat is shown to be in contact with an entity depicted alternately as a looming horned shadow and a deep, gravelly voice on the phone outside her dormitory. This entity informs her of her parents' impending death and instructs her to kill everyone. After breakfast, the nuns receive a phone call informing them that Kat's parents have died. They dismiss Rose to shovel the driveway, after which Kat murders both nuns. Kat pursues an oblivious Rose into the academy building shortly after Rose has her period, confirming she's not pregnant. Kat stabs her to death and beheads her. As Gordon and the policemen search the building, they find Kat prostrating in front of the boiler again, with the decapitated heads of her 3 victims lined up next to her. Brandishing the knife, Kat exclaims, "Hail Satan," before the policeman shoots her in the shoulder, revealing that Joan is Kat. Kat is detained in a mental hospital where a priest arrives and performs an exorcism to banish her demon. The exorcism is seemingly successful, but Kat begs the horned figure not to leave her before it vanishes. Joan, the Kat of 9 years later, murders Bill and Linda when they pull over in Bramford. She beheads their corpses, coats her face with their blood like makeup, and brings the heads to the boiler room of the academy, seemingly in an effort to summon the demon she lost years ago. However, she finds the boiler cold and unused. Now completely alone, Kat leaves the academy and breaks down crying in the middle of the road.
The Blackcoat's Daughter. A movie of white people doing white people stuff.
Yes.
What'd you think about it, Dom?
Honestly, I had this in my list for a long time because I wanted to see it when it came out. The first thing I noticed when it came on was the DirecTV thing. I was like, oh yeah, it was like a DirecTV thing, wasn't it? Like a movie that they produced. At first I was like, what is this going to be? Is it going to be some period piece where that's why it's the Blackcoat's Daughter? That's what I thought at first. And then as it started going, I was like, what is this? What's going on? And like, it's like switching things up. And I was like, well, I know Emma Roberts is in this. Where the hell is she? And then it like half an hour in, it's like, then she shows up and you're like, oh, okay. So who is she? And then like, it starts going and going and you're like, now I'm very intrigued. I want to know what's going on. It's this great like revelation of like, oh shit, she's like possessed by a demon. And this is just her slow descent into that. And then when you get the reveal that Emma Roberts is actually just an older version of Kiernan Shipka, which as we got into it, I was like, okay, I think I buy it. And then we get to see, like, she was in a mental institution, she was exercised, and then, like, what are the chances of her meeting, like, the girl's parents, too, and the anniversary thing, and just all these things lining up, and then you get to the end and you're like, damn, that was actually a pretty good fucking movie. Yeah. Like, it wasn't, like, scary, but I love, like...
The tone was the same throughout.
Yes. It had this, like, sense of dread throughout the whole film.
Yeah, because literally in the beginning, you're thinking, what's wrong here? Because it feels almost like a fever dream. Yeah. These two girls just happen to be left alone in this place. It's like, that doesn't happen.
Well, even the priests and the nuns are acting kind of weird at first, and you're like, so wait, because like normally in a movie you're trained to be like, oh, it's them. The people in charge are usually the ones who are like in a cult or something, and like she even tells that one story about the nuns who were worshiping Satan and then they got killed or whatever. And so you're thinking like, oh shit, it has to do with them, right? Nope. Turns out Kiernan Shipka is just like, she's just very impressionable by the devil. It turns out. I mean, in Sabrina, like I think is she a Satanist in real life?
I think so.
Oh, okay, makes sense. But one thing I thought was like a no holds, like the shot of her coming up to Rose and just like murdering her, I was like, that just felt so real. Like it just was like, because it wasn't like oh, look at all the blood splattering and like, oh, she's like chopping off her limbs or anything. It was like, no, it was like stab, 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 and it's like stabs, continual stab, and you're like, because I'm re-listening to last podcast, and it's the Manson murders. And I'm like, shit, like they stabbed them like a lot. And it's like, that's what happens in this. It's like, she just just continues to stab her. And it's like, damn. Like that, even more than seeing like the nuns like getting killed. Like that one was more like visceral, I guess, like more real. Cause it's just like, in real life, like if someone just comes up and stabs you, it's not going to be blood splattering everywhere. It's like stab, 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 stab.
When I first saw it, the first thing I thought was like, this is a really good movie. How come I never heard about this? I might have seen it in passing with the whole DirecTV thingy, but I don't remember this at all. The only reason why I found it was because it came up on Netflix, and I was like, oh, hey, it's two of those people that I know. Why not?
Yeah.
And when I saw it, I was more shocked that it was actually good than it was just watchable. Because I thought going into it, I was just going to be one of those horror movies you see where it's like, yeah, it was okay. Like, it's whatever. It's exactly what you thought you were gonna get type of movies. But I don't know. To me, it just felt more like this is someone trying to make a horror film. Even if it isn't the scariest movie that I've ever seen, it's still a horror movie.
Yeah.
And that comes off really well with this. Like I said, because the tone of the movie stays throughout. It's not like Insidious where it's trying to be creepy. Then it's like, oh, and the further. And it's like, okay, now you're trying to make me laugh? No, it's not supposed to make you laugh. It's making me laugh pretty hard. It's not like that. It's not like it's trying to do two things. It's just telling the story. And you're right. You're watching it and you're like, all right, what's going to happen? So what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Why is nothing happening? But then next thing you know it, you're like intrigued about, hey, what is going to happen?
Yeah.
Like what's going on? And then all of a sudden it's like, bam. And then you're like, oh, okay. And I honestly, I like the idea that you're watching the pre-timeline.
Yeah.
And then what's happening now. Because you're right. You're thinking they're two characters. They're sisters. Oh, maybe they murdered their parents. You know what I mean? Like there's like you're trying to figure out, well, what are these two? Like, who are these people? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh.
Well, because like at first when you before you find out who anyone like is really, when she gets picked up and like you see the bumper sticker of the Brantford Academy, you're like, oh, so are these Kieran Shipka's parents? And okay. Like, or I did think maybe they were Rose's, but I was like, oh, it makes more sense that it would be theirs, right? But then when we find out, especially when he shows the picture, I was like, oh, yeah. Oh God, I don't know. This movie, it's so atmospheric. It starts off with like this kind of dream sequence too, of like, she knows her parents are dead way before like everyone else knows. And then the demon attaching itself to her, and then even like the stuff with it's such a good it kind of feels like House of the Devil, where it's kind of like that slow burn.
It's just a good horror film.
Yeah, I would put it on like during Halloween, because like in the earlier part of Halloween, not when you're like wanting like all the gore and like Saw and Texas Chainsaw. This is more of like. Oh yeah, like it's like Clove Hitch Killer. That one it's a slow burn of a movie too, but it's so good when you get to the end and you realize, oh shit, like all this stuff just like clicks together and you're like, that was a good movie.
Yeah, like I'm not saying it's the most terrific horror film that ever exists, but the fact that it's as good as it is, and I've never heard anyone talk about it.
No.
It's shocking because you're right. This is a horror film that I've already told people about. I'm like, hey, if you like horror films, watch this movie. It's a legit good movie.
Yeah.
I told you, I was like, yeah, like you have to watch. Even before we were going to review it, I was like, you should watch it. It's actually a really good watch. And if you're really into like, asthmatic, you're into good asthmatic horror films. If you're into like atmospheric horror films, then this is it. Because when I think about this movie, all I think about are like darks and grays, and then just like a feeling of like dread. You know what I mean? Even if it's not necessarily like the whole film, it's all, oh, you're always in the down and dumps. It just gives that feel.
Yeah.
For literally the whole movie. So if you're into that, especially in these times, right, where you need a pick me up, you can at least say, hey, at least the devil didn't get inside of me.
Yeah, at least my only friend isn't the devil and he's leaving me again. Wow.
Yeah. Hopefully that's a little pick me up for you. Who knows? But yeah, this is definitely a must watch for me. This is, if you have time, which I'm assuming you probably do, go ahead, stream it. It's on Netflix, right?
Yeah.
It's on Netflix. Amazing for what it is. I promise you, if you're a legit horror fan, you'll not just, well, there wasn't a lot of blood and guts and nothing like jumped out to me like every 15 seconds.
That's not what this
is not what that is. But if you're into like good horror films, you're gonna like it. I promise.
Yeah.
And you could count on that.
Yeah.
Men's Warehouse. I mean, it's not that bad.
All right, so we need to lighten up the mood, right? I mean, after the coronavirus and the devil possession, we need something a little bit lighter. So, we're going to talk about some movies that you might not know were based on books. Die Hard. So, the book was called Nothing Lasts Forever. Author Roderick Thorpe wrote Nothing Lasts Forever after watching The Towering Inferno, which featured a skyscraper that catches on fire. Thorpe envisioned a group of terrorists with guns chasing his character, Joe Leland, a retired NYPD detective, through the skyscraper's fiery ash. Nothing Lasts Forever was later adapted to Die Hard, with the main character's name changing from Joe Leland to John McClane. The reason for that, though, is because back in the 60s, they adapted one of his earlier novels, which features the character Joe Leland, but it was played by Frank Sinatra. And I guess that this one's it actually continues from that. The Parent Trap. Did you know The Parent Trap was based on a book? The book is called Lottie and Lisa. Disney's original Parent Trap, starring Haley Mills, was based on a German novel titled Lottie and Lisa. Oh, God. Das Doppeltchen. Something German from author Erich Katzner. The novel, first published in 1949, was turned into various film and TV adaptations from 9 countries, including the United States, Germany, India, Japan, and Iran. I kind of want to watch the Indian version. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? The book is Who Censored Roger Rabbit? I think most people know this. But the Walt Disney Company acquired the rights to Gary K. Wolfe's 1981 book, Who Censored Roger Rabbit? Frank Marshall, Kathleen Kennedy, and Steven Spielberg developed the project and convinced rival studios to loan Disney their iconic cartoon characters, such as Warner Bros.' Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck. The novel was presented as a hard-boiled spoof that took place during modern times and featured the death of Roger Rabbit, a cartoon character on the downswing of his career, while Who Framed Roger Rabbit was a family-friendly and lighter in tone. I actually have Who Censored Roger Rabbit. I've gotten maybe halfway through and it was kind of boring. The concept is pretty good.
Yeah.
But the way that it was is the tunes aren't on movies and stuff. They're in comic strips. But this was set in the 80s, so I was I don't understand why they're in comic strips, because even at that time, I don't think comic strips were a popular thing. I don't know. It was meh to me. And then, Roger Rabbit gets killed off at the beginning, but he's alive because tunes can do this thing where they create a double of themselves. And then they speak in word bubbles.
Yeah.
And so they find the word bubbles that I don't know. It's this whole thing, and it's the movie's actually it's honestly somebody took the story and was
how can we make it interesting?
Yeah, how can we make it good? And they did. Honestly, they really did. Mean Girls. In case you didn't know, it was based off of Queen Bees and Wannabes, helping your daughter survive cliches, gossip, boyfriends, and other realities of adolescence. I didn't know that was the whole fucking time. I knew it was Queen Bees and Wannabes, but I didn't know it was all that. In 2004, Tina Fey called upon Saturday Night Live creator Lorne Michaels to produce a film version of Rosalind Wiseman's book Queen Bees and Wannabes. And Michaels got in touch with Paramount Pictures to acquire the film rights. Although Queen Bees and Wannabes is nonfiction, Fey incorporated elements of her own high school experiences into the screenplay. Oh, because she was from Africa, right?
Yeah.
But she spoke perfect English.
Yeah.
Even though she grew up in Africa her whole life. And
yeah.
Oh, okay. And she had to deal with the plastics. Oh.
She also didn't lose her virginity till she was almost 30 or something, right?
Oh, really?
She was old. She was older.
Mrs. Doubtfire. This is the one that I was what? The book is Alias Madame Doubtfire. The 1993 hit comedy Mrs. Doubtfire is based on a British author Anne Fine's young adult novel titled Alias Madame Doubtfire. The movie and the book share very similar plots. Both feature a man who, after a messy divorce that limits his time with his family, dresses like a woman to take a job as his kid's nanny.
Did you see the newer version? Like the
No.
pictures and stuff?
Oh yes, you sent it to me because the one kid.
Yeah.
Looks like it's gonna be a mess.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
Slumdog Millionaire. The book is Q&A. The Academy Award-winning Slumdog Millionaire was based on Indian author.
It's pronounced QAnon.
No. Damn it. The Indian author Vikas Scott. God, why foreign names? Vikas Swarup's Q&A, which was first published in 2005. The novel followed a young orphan who became a very successful game show winner, only to be sent to jail under accusation of cheating. After all this time, when I first saw Slumdog, I was like, oh, this is pretty good. It probably shouldn't have won because I think Benjamin Button was a little bit better. But and the time after, I was like, Slumdog's a terrible movie. But more recently, I've been like, you know what? Slumdog actually was a pretty good movie.
So why did you flip this?
I don't know. That happened with Superbad, where if there was a time where I was like, this movie is overrated and dumb. Then I remember I watched it not too long, I think like a year or two ago. I was like, you know what? This movie's actually pretty funny.
What would be your favorite book to movie adaptation that you can think of?
I'm not going to give a main favorite. I'm just going to I'm going to rattle off a couple that are pretty good. Okay. The Hunger Games Catching Fire. They did a pretty good job with that one. The second movie. That one was pretty good. I don't like the way that they split the third book, like Harry Potter. It is a great adaptation of like the book. I don't want to keep going into how it fixes things. It's a short story, but I'll count it. The Mist. The Mist is a pretty good one. They take that short of a story and they make it into like this. Oh, that movie's so good. Murder on the Orient Express. Both versions, the original version and Kenneth Branagh's new one. That was a pretty good one. I thought they did a pretty good job with that. Oh, and I know, No Country for Old Men. That's a fucking good. Like the Coen brothers did a great job of adapting it. Like it's straight up like they took the story and they made it into a movie. There's like one or two characters maybe that they left out, but like it's enough to be like it's not enough to be like it derails anything. It's like, okay, you did a pretty good job there. Now, if you want to talk about movies that didn't do a good job, unfortunately, The Dark Tower did a terrible job at doing any kind of like adapting. A book that I want to see adapted is The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. I think I told you about that one before. Like it's a bunch of different characters. It's like an ensemble book. But it's set in like the 30s or 40s. It's like a boarding house. Like there's the main character, he's like deaf and mute, and he listens to all these people's problems and he tries to help them with their problems by like getting them together and like being like, hey, look at you guys have like similar problems. Like you guys wouldn't be lonely if you guys talk to each other. And none of them want to talk to each other because what they really want is just someone to just be there as a bounce board to tell their problems to. And yet he like has his own problems and he can't even tell people like his problems. It's a really good book. It's like one of my favorite books.
I mean, it's funny that you brought this up because I feel like not that long ago we were talking about how I think it was like Hollywood and adaptations and them running out of ideas. Mm-hmm. That's why they're like, oh, here's a fourth part of this movie that we should have made.
Hey, wait. So like the Fast and the Furious still makes money. So let's give them F9.
Do you think then that we are in an age right now where we're more likely going to see less adaptations of X book or X whatever.
Yes, barring I think new releases or like them just going back and like trying to like, well, what can we do next? Because, but see, the thing is, like, people always talk about how like Hollywood ran out of ideas. They just keep adapting, like they keep remaking things. It's like, but before that, like they literally just adapted books.
Yeah.
That's all they did, and so like they weren't their original. Like even like Planet of the Apes was a book. So you can't even say like that was its own like like the sequels were written like by other people, but like the original concept was not like somebody didn't just like somebody came up for a story for it and then which the story is completely different than what we see.
Well, the reason why I say that is because you're right that people complain about this shit all the time, but the thing is, even with some of the shit being remade over and over and over again, like we said, people still draw back to like original concepts. I mean, we've been seeing it this year with H.P. Lovecraft.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like even though a lot of his shit's been done over again, I mean, I think I told you there was like a cartoon kids movie about H.P. Lovecraft. Yeah. So like obviously stuff like his and other writers have been done over and over and over again. I mean, we saw it with Little Women, but see, then people can still go back to that original book or idea and then take from that and then make something all new.
I mean,
even though it is somewhat similar.
Look at, or even like, you're right. Like it, especially like Shakespeare, they constantly do that where like they'll take Taming of the Shrew and they'll just make 10 Things I Hate About You, which everyone loves. So it's like, or was it
Shakespeare in Love?
No. I think it's Twelfth Night that's what She's the Man is based off of. I don't remember. But see, like like Emma, they translated and they made Clueless, and now we have a new adaptation of Emma, which just came out. Right. So it's like, what's the right? It's like it's kind of like what's the difference?
Yeah, I think it's because media like television and moving pictures and stuff that it is way more accessible to people, so they can go back easily and say, well, Power Rangers were my childhood, so like I know what's good. But then you could go back and say, okay, but what about all those people in Japan that have been doing this for 20 years before Power Rangers came to America?
Yeah,
shouldn't they have a say? Oh, that doesn't matter to you now?
Oh, and then the fact that they cut together like, what was it, like 2 or 3 different series to make like, and then they just added in American people later.
Yeah. So I feel like that's the same thing with like movies and stuff, where people will look back at Star Wars and say, this is why it's the greatest. But then you could go back and
Flash Gordon.
Yeah, you go back and say like, well, he went and he wanted to rip this off.
He did it because he could. Like Willow too. Like literally, George Lucas's whole career is based off of he couldn't get the rights to do something, so he just decided to rip it off. Willow was because he couldn't get the rights to Lord of the Rings, so he's like, well, how do I make a story about like a short person going on an adventure with a bunch of tall people and wizards and stuff, and they got a battle dragon and things. Oh, okay. I'll do what I did with Star Wars.
I'll just rip it off. And I think that's why it's more polarizing than a book, right? Mm-hmm. A book seems so plain Jane.
Yeah.
But when you have something like Lord of the Rings, right, where we have this amazing film adaptation in the early 2000s, where let's say now, you know, they're going to make a TV show, allegedly. They're going to make a TV show. And who knows, like, I already can hear 1,000 voices say, well, it's not that good. Like, see what they did to this and blah, blah, blah. And you know people are going to talk about how the original movie adaptation is going to be better. Which,
if you read the books, you honestly, you probably don't like the movies because, like, if you had the books to read for so long, like, the movies did, like, a disservice to, like, the Hobbit's characters. Like, they cut out a lot of their stuff, especially at the end. The end is really wrapped up, really, like, fast.
So you're saying that the original book, they didn't just all jump in joy together in slow motion in this room?
No, they had to go back and fight Sauron, because that's where he was. I mean, Saruman and Wormtail, because they were actually... Wormtongue. God damn it. I'm getting all my stupid, like, fantasy confused. And because they took over the Shire, and they had one last battle to fight in the Shire.
Huh, weird. But hey, I grew up with those, so I know it's good. I don't know. I mean, it is interesting, though, to hear, right, that, like, was it Die Hard, you said?
Yeah.
Like, Die Hard was based off of a book that Frank Sinatra technically was kind of a part of, I guess.
Yeah.
That you could technically watch Die Hard and say, hey, that's supposed to be Frank Sinatra.
Mm-hmm.
And people look at you like you're fucking crazy.
Or like the idea that Mrs. Doubtfire, that's the one that blew my mind. Was like,
because it seems like a very 90s thing, right?
Yeah, that they would just have been like, see, look, it's wacky old Robin Williams. See guys, it's me. I'm gay Elmer Fudd.
But I'm pretty sure there's more that we don't even think about, know about.
Oh yeah, there like, I mean, even when you think about it, like Total Recall was based off a short story. Blade Runner is based off a short story. Like anything, basically anything science fiction is based off of Philip K. Dick. Is basically because he just sat there and was like, "Well, the aliens came and told me all this stuff."
It's actually a higher being, though.
I'm sorry. And then that's why he wrote all that stuff. And then he wanted to give it to us as a prophecy, right? And that's why everything.
You're crazy.
Yeah, that's why everything he wrote like is basically coming true.
No, but he was crazy, right?
Was he though? Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was.
Yeah, and hey, maybe there's gonna be a part 2 of this. Because, like I said, there's probably a ton of shit we're not even thinking of.
Hell yeah.
Like, a ton.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do one that borrowed from X book or writing or whatever that, you know, like you said, like 10 Things I Hate About You. How many people know that was a Shakespearean story? Or, I mean, well, you know, you look at something like The Color Out of Space compared to Annihilation, you can obviously see that they're from the same thing, but Color Out of Space is more, I want to be closer to the book. Annihilation's like, we'll do our own thing.
Yeah. So. Yeah, one's like, I'm going to give you the original one. The other one's like, how do I spice it up?
How do I make it better?
How do I make it...
But with that, we'll say thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you guys, everybody.
If you would like to subscribe to our podcast on any streaming service that you use, please feel free to. Yeah. I'm not going to force you. But we would love it. Or you could go to YouTube, follow us on there. Our episodes get released every single time. We don't have a back catalog on that. We might work on that, though. But for right now, all new episodes you'll get right there. So there's a link in the show notes. So you can go there, subscribe, let us know. Or you could go to our social. That's INTB_podcast. Instagram, Twitter, or you can email us at intbpodcast@gmail.com and let us know, is there a favorite adaptation that you like? Is there something that you thought was the best?
Yeah.
The worst?
Yeah, are there more examples of terrible adaptions of books? Or maybe, have you seen Blackcoat's Daughter? Did you like it? Did you hate it because, it's too slow and it's not scary, not gory enough?
Yeah. Or have you heard of the coronavirus?
Oh, yeah. It's this new thing that's sweeping the nation.
Literally.
God,
yeah, just message us about whatever. Like I said, we're always down for conversation, no matter what it is.
We're always down to clown.
But until next time, remember, guys.
It's not that bad.
It's not that bad.